Hello and welcome to another episode of Between Studs. This is our 101st episode, so I'm pretty excited.
We need some Dalmatians.
I know, I was just thinking,
where's
the Dalmatians?
I know. Sorry, guys, I dropped the ball on that one. We should talk about the wrecking ball on this episode. Oh,
Yes.
segue. Okay.
Yes.
So yeah, this is gonna be before we get into the Lego Masters. This is gonna be starting season 2 of Between the Studs because we had 100 episodes, and I'm gonna call it season 2 on the podcast. That's the only place you'll see it. But yeah, that's just so you know.
Season 2.
It feels so special in the part.
Exactly. But season
Feels
3
like
of
the
Lego
season
Masters.
finale was just like last week.
I know, it was just a week ago. It was a live stream. It was pretty fun. But season 3 of Lego Masters is chugging right along. We had this is episode 9, right? The Wrecking Ball one?
Yes.
Because 10 is Marvel. And this aired just before Thanksgiving a while ago. And we didn't get to it because we were so busy, but we're talking about it now. So,
Yes.
That's right.
Yep. What did you guys think about the Wrecking Ball episode? High-level thoughts. Let's start with Randy.
I always love it when they break break stuff apart.
Good for TV.
Yeah. I just was trying to understand. I guess like my only thing was, what did the Wrecking Ball really play into
Judging?
the challenge?
Yeah.
Into the challenge. It was cool to watch.
It was
and maybe
amazing.
that's just what it was.
Yeah.
But when I was watching the episode, I'm like, because I know Steven and Steven were really working on stopping the Wrecking Ball, and I'm like, but if they do, what does that have to do with the challenge? So, but I love the castles. I thought that was really fun, but I guess that part of it I didn't. It took me a little bit of. I think it was just fun to break stuff up, which it was.
I don't think
it
it was whether it survived the Wrecking Ball. I think it was more just for fun. Like you're saying. It's interesting.
Yeah.
So, what about you, Daniel?
Castles.
Yeah,
Who doesn't love a
exactly.
castle challenge?
Love castles.
But yeah, I definitely agree. There were cool elements, right? You're building a castle. You're building it around a minifigure, which is randomly chosen.
You're building
you
it
see that a
tall.
lot.
Uh-huh.
You know, you get a character or something, and you build your scene around that. Building for height, that's another challenge. But the judging parameters seemed unclear, at least the way they presented it. I'm sure it was more explicit for the contestants, but for us, you know, a couple times they mentioned it was like aesthetics and story, which is what they're always judging on.
Yeah.
And then they would say strength. But if you're just smashing it with a wrecking ball, there's no real quantitative way that they're assessing that.
Yeah, it's either you survive the nuke or you don't.
Yeah,
You know?
right,
There were a couple times where they would include comments like that were very subjective, like for Brendan and Greg. I think, for example, they said, "Oh, yours seemed really strong," just because in the wreckage on the floor they picked up one big chunk that was still together.
Yeah.
And Dave and Emily,
Dave and
like
Emily
the
stayed
wrecking
the
ball
piece,
hit
yeah.
theirs, and the whole top kind of.
Yeah, so
wrecking.
theirs was strong
So they were
too,
making
but
comments about it being strong, but it wasn't in any really quantifiable way, which was kind of odd to me. It was just hard to gauge really what they were judging based on.
yeah, you'd love to hear more behind the scenes about why people are winning or going home, you know? Because it would maybe make more sense to why it actually happened. Sometimes there's a little confusion. But yeah, I did like the challenge. I thought there was many fun elements. You're building off a character, which can be challenging.
Yeah.
You're building a tall tower in a short amount of time. I think they had 9 hours.
Yeah.
And it was difficult. And then you have to destroy with a wrecking ball, so you have to think about how it looks when it breaks.
Yeah.
So some teams were focusing on some aspects, and some were focusing on different. So yeah, it was pretty
A lot
fun.
of interesting challenges and twists, but maybe not as cohesive as it could have been.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, what does a wrecking ball really have to do with the castle? Like,
Yeah.
why were
Yeah.
those two put together?
Because it's cool. I mean,
It was cool to watch it all break apart.
It was the rule of cool. Don't
Yes.
think about it too
Yeah,
hard.
yeah.
I think, that was the point of this episode. But yeah, there were several good builds. Let's start
There were
talking
absolutely.
about those now.
All right, I'm going to go through my list here. So my first one I have is Emily and Liam. They had the Troll Queen.
Yes.
Yep.
A fun idea. They had the queen that had been cursed.
Yes.
And then the castle was being like enveloped in dark colors. That was
Yeah.
kind of cool. So
I thought that looked very cool.
Yes, there
was a very
wasn't
nice
the tallest castle. I think at first Liam was like, "We got to make the tallest castle," and then Emily's like, no,
Yeah.
mom time." Yes.
Well, because they had the 4 towers that they focused on, and in making those 4, it took up the time to make
Yep,
them.
and one little point at the top, which seemed a little bit like an afterthought.
Yeah.
So.
Probably.
I agree.
They definitely put in that tallest is immune thing as kind
Yeah.
of like a bait, like a fool's errand kind of thing. Like,
Yeah.
try and build high, and we'll
Yeah.
hope that yours falls over.
Make it
There's
look
some
pretty dumb,
drama.
yeah.
right?
There'll be some drama at the end. And there was only one team that had a little trouble with that. But
Yeah.
yeah, Emily and Liam's very nice with that technique, having that stuff actually in the walls of the castle as opposed to something on the outside that's sort of crawling up it. It showed that their idea was very clear from the outset.
Yeah.
I love the color choice.
Yeah, the colors were great. I think that they definitely nailed that. I think the only reason their castle wasn't bigger and got more wow factor is because they were spending a lot of time integrating those different colors into the bricks versus like slapping on plates.
Right.
Yeah.
Or filling it with orange, like Nick and Stacy. So they built it more thoroughly, but maybe that ended up costing them higher level regards in that situation. But I thought they were totally safe, so good for them.
Yeah.
Hopefully they keep on trucking. We'll see.
So next we have Austin and Justin. They had the wizard. And they had a little hiccup at the beginning.
Yeah, I think they misunderstood the prompt about it being the figures castle.
Very much so.
Right.
Yeah. Well, when you're tired, you can miss things, and then you get an idea and you go with it, and then you're already a couple hours down in a challenge, and you're like,
Everybody was very clearly tired.
Yeah, they
by
look
this point.
tired.
However,
yeah.
I would think that, like you mentioned, the doctors would be used to having a weird schedule and weird eating habits and things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But even they,
firefighters and doctors should have an advantage. And honestly, Greg is a Coast Guard man, so he's military background, so he should also be having an advantage too. And the fact that you're just used to difficult situations. So.
Yeah. The more stress. But I think they did do a good pivot when they realized it with what they did. I think,
sure.
I like their idea once they changed it, but then they had the time hindrance because they were quite a ways in when they pivoted.
They were at least a chunk of the way in. And then I think that they had some really good ideas with the wizard hat being sculpted. That Jamie particularly mentioned it, how he liked that, but I think that the fact that they did have difficulties with the idea ended up kind of sinking them. And they already put too much time into it. They had to pivot. The magic battle details were a little bit chaotic and not in a good way.
Yeah.
So you need a little bit of a clearer story there. So
it was so busy.
Amy summed it up well as just too many different parts. They needed to come up with like one design for a magic effect.
Yeah, one explosion or something, one burst of magic, something.
One big beam or something. Yeah, it was a little too varied and not super great on the technique front.
Yeah.
So they definitely struggled with this one and ended up costing them. But we'll talk about that in a little bit.
Yeah, we'll get to that part. Next we have Steven Squared.
Yeah, Steven.
They had the troll, which I thought was a cool character.
It's the biggest figure, too. And I don't think they have to really do anything special with the figure other than put it in the castle, but it was cool. So
it was cool. And they were focused on that base. They wanted to stop that wrecking ball.
Well, the troll did have to do, because the tower had like a bridge, so it was like the troll under the bridge thing.
Yeah.
So they did do that too.
They had a bridge going horizontally, I think.
It was like a tower
like
sort of built through, it almost looked like an old suspension bridge or something, which maybe kind of breaks the world building a little bit, but it was very, very well done.
Yeah.
It looked really nice.
I was proud of the final result. I was terrified for them at first because they said, we're going to stop the wrecking ball. I'm like, I'm getting flashbacks to me saying we're going to break the Richter scale on the machine, and we did not break the Richter scale, but they stopped that wrecking ball.
They did a great job.
Skipped off the
it did knock over the tower itself, but that base didn't move a muscle. In fact, the whole stand moved, and that didn't happen on any of the other ones. So I'm like,
if they had built their whole castle like that mound in sort of this kind of tapering rock-like thing, they might have.
Totally stopped that.
But having the castle on that sort of donut-shaped island, I think, was where it broke.
But proud of them. Fun. I thought it looked cool, and just a little bit short of the winner's circle, as it were. But I think that they achieved a lot of things they set out to, which is good. So.
They were definitely top 3 for me.
Oh yeah,
they were up there, and it was very aesthetic. Like I liked the whole scene. I think
that round shape is a pretty complex thing to do in Lego. So kudos to them. Yeah.
All right, Dave and Emily, they're Forest Maiden.
Yes.
And they went for tallest. They were one of the ones that wanted to
get there. They were in that battle from the beginning,
and
they stuck to it, which is good. And I also think they got one of the coolest figures with the Forest Maiden.
Yes.
So, good stuff. What do you think about their tower, Daniel?
They had a great color scheme. I mean, they lifted the color scheme right off the figure with the dark tan and the dark green, which was great. They had, they did a snot technique for the tower so it could go up very quickly. But yet they added enough detail to it that it didn't look hastily thrown together.
Yeah.
All the corners of it had nice little details. Every once in a while there was like a balcony poking out.
The flowers and the vines going around.
That added another third color.
Nice.
They were like
tons of characters and details and trees and things.
Beautiful scene. I mean, it looked like hanging gardens or something.
It looked kind of like a mock you'd see at a convention sometimes too. So it was a really great job for them.
I thought theirs was very well done.
Yeah.
We'll get to more on that later.
And theirs was the tallest, right? Because the snowflake from Nick and Stacy fell off. So, but so good for them. I think that Dave focused on the architecture. I think Emily was doing all those cool details.
Yeah.
I could be wrong, but I think
said
that's how it broke
it was
down.
tall like him and
Not
not
hideous.
hideous like
Yeah.
him. That was such
That
like
was
a
the
classic
best.
brother and
Brother.
sister
Yeah.
thing. Not hideous, you know.
They are some
Not
funny
hideous.
people, and it's
Yeah.
really
Oh
good
my
to see
gosh.
them
I
do
want to
well.
meet them because they are a hoot.
And I can also tell, like, as everybody's getting tired, their sense of humor is getting, like, drier
Yeah.
and more out there. Like,
Yeah.
their filters are coming off.
Yeah.
They're getting maybe a little more emotionally
Just
invested in
kind
it
of
sometimes,
chaotic,
too, like a little
yeah.
more zany.
When
so
Brendan and
it's-
Greg, when they were doing their little jester speech, they, like, sounded like they were losing it.
Yeah.
His
It
little
sounded like their
arms were
minds-
just going.
Their minds
He
are
was
going,
so-
folks.
And then Liam was like doing these funky voices. I'm like, Liam, you feeling okay? You
Yeah,
sit down,
yeah.
have a Gatorade?
Have
Yeah.
some water.
Leo's eyes were so poofy. I was like, he needed a nap.
is-
Poor
it is
guy.
getting to
And I'm
him.
sure I can't even imagine.
Yeah,
I've heard, but-
they have a tough schedule to
Yeah.
film it. They're not filming week by week. They're filming day by day. So,
Yeah.
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 Just got to remember that.
Just-
And on a
their
personal
pants.
note, the Forest Maiden was my favorite, actually. I loved
Great
it
figure.
from the bottom to the top. And I felt all the way up to the top when they put the little tree. Like, it fit. It didn't look haphazard or rushed at the top. I feel like it all just went.
Yeah, the only thing that could have been better was just if they put some bricks on the inside, but the technique they were using did not really allow that. So, but still a great build and very well deserved for high judging score by
Yes.
the judges. So good.
All right,
But,
we've Nick and Stacy. They had the Snow Guardian.
Yes,
And they were this other team going for the tallest.
They were competing with Dave and Emily to see who could get the tallest, and their technique was very different. I think that was probably Nick kind of spearheading that design. And it looked pretty strong, and then they really thought about how it was going to break with the orange bricks all
Yes.
throughout.
Absolutely.
But I think that they really fell short on the lava monster.
Yeah.
I think
It
the
looked
aesthetics
more like
of
a-
the whole
The
thing, it
aesthetics
was
in general.
Yeah.
it was white and blue,
It
and
was
that
a
was
good
it.
idea in having the kind of stacked ice block look,
Yeah.
but the execution didn't quite sell it as
Yeah.
well as it should have.
Yeah, it didn't quite get that brick look to the tower, and then some of the other details were really lacking. I think because they were competing with Dave and Emily on the height so much, that they kind of let the other details fall to the wayside.
Yeah.
And I think they were more confident that they were going to get tallest, which is maybe why they didn't put as much stock into the aesthetics and the details and stuff.
Yeah.
Dave and Emily did both just in case.
Yeah. It ended up
But
paying off for them, but
I
not
think-
for Nick and
Nick-
Stacey.
Nick and Stacy tried to put all their eggs in one basket on the height.
Yeah,
challenge.
and that poor snowflake. As soon as you saw him making it, you're like, no.
It looked like the whole thing was made out of like 2x16 plates.
Yeah.
And
Right.
then just stuck on the top with like one snot connection.
Yeah, it really was.
Yeah, okay, no wonder it's gonna.
Yeah, and they barely started moving the table, and it was just like, bloop.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
It
I'm
melted, literally.
I'm gonna guess. So they're building out on their building tables, and then what we saw was all the builds were sort of lined up like in the back hallway.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if they moved them to the back hallway or if production, but I would have guessed that snowflake probably had already fallen off once.
That or they took it off to move it, because me and Steven have
Maybe.
done that, other teams
Yeah.
have done that in order to get things over, then they put it on
Then you have to
finish
move it
it.
intact
Yeah.
to the wrecking position.
Yeah.
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 Right off.
Yeah.
As soon as they started moving it.
Not gonna go.
But so Nick and Stacey had a little struggles with this one, but
Yeah.
we'll talk about judging in a minute. But.
Yes. Let's see. Brendan and Greg with their jester,
Mm-hmm.
which Amy loved.
Yes,
Yeah.
this is probably the
Yeah.
most one of the more tricky figures, just because of the color scheme is very.
Right.
You could go with a gray castle, or you could go with a red and blue castle, which is what they did.
And they
Yeah.
went for bright red and bright blue.
Yeah.
I was saying if I had done that, I may have swapped one of those for like either do dark blue and red
Yep.
or dark red and regular blue.
Mm-hmm.
But man, they went all in and it was bold.
Yeah,
They did.
they had the very cool little masks on the bottom, and the
Those
doorway
were
was
nice.
open.
There
It
were
was
like little chess pieces kind
Yeah.
of flanking the doorway. It was very Alice in Wonderland.
Their story was great.
Yeah.
For the
Yeah.
whole thing, it
Very
was
Alice in
really fun.
Wonderland.
Mm-hmm.
So you could definitely see Greg going wild in the presentation part of the
Yeah.
episode, and so they
He's off the
clearly
deep end.
they're on their last 2 brain cells.
Yes.
Yeah,
Right.
oh yeah. They're rubbing
they-
them together to make a spark.
And they were having a great time with it, though. You could tell they were enjoying it towards the end. And when they were talking with Will, they were putting down the bricks so quickly.
Yes.
They were like, "Hey, Will, how you doing?"
Yeah.
It was so funny to watch. So I'm glad they did well, and their crazy zany idea paid off. So
Yeah.
And yeah, like we said, Amy was very pleased with that, to see more emotion and color and story from them. They've always been kind of very serious
yeah, tactical.
engineering or yes, tactical
Yes,
is a good
yeah.
word for it, builders. So to see them kind of start to let loose, I think was why Amy favored them
Yeah.
towards the end.
The competitive builders had a fun day, and it ended
Yes.
up working out for
Yeah.
us. So.
It's always nice to see the serious people get a little goofy.
Right. And that was all of our teams. It's getting shorter,
Wow.
right?
As we get through the episodes, we actually have more time to focus on the builds, and I kind of
Which
like
is
that.
fun.
Yeah.
This is the first episode where it did. It felt like you could actually see the building more and got to see some of the details that you miss when it's so quick.
And some of the struggles, too, because
Yes.
you could see why some of the teams were having difficulty and their build wasn't as highly judged. So,
Yeah.
But speaking of judging,
Yes.
the top two.
Top two, we had Brendan and Greg and Dave and Emily.
I
Which
agree.
I think that was,
Yeah, for top two for sure.
Yeah.
However,
Yeah.
Dave and Emily keeps making the comment that they've been in the top two. I don't even know how many times.
Most of the
Most
time.
of the time, yeah.
Probably at
Really.
least 3 or 4
What'd you
times.
say, always a bridesmaid,
Always
never-
a bridesmaid, never the bride.
Mhm.
And I'm going to say it on this episode, I think they got the shaft.
Yeah.
I do.
You think
I agree.
so? Yeah.
I agree. I think theirs was, I felt technically better and visually better, and they had a great story. Brendan and Greg's was fun too, but I just feel like the other one, and theirs was the tallest.
Yep. Well,
Yeah.
on a challenge where they talk about height being important, and they got the height,
Yeah.
I think that should weigh into it. And I know that Brendan and Greg had a more full castle, wasn't so tower-like. But so is that more important than the tall part? Because it's like, I don't know. I think that the judging presentation and then the results are at a different rate. You know what I'm saying? So.
And the way they phrased it when they were announcing the winner was who best embodied the challenge. Mm-hmm. And I feel like Dave and Emily did a better job embodying the challenge as a whole.
Yeah.
Aesthetics, height, and strength.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And Brendan and Greg had strength and aesthetics also, but not quite as much
They
height.
weren't as high. They weren't as tall as the Dave and Emily's tower.
I
so.
feel like Dave and Emily did a better job going for what the challenge was designed for.
Mm-hmm. I totally see your points. I'm kind of a 50-50 because I do like that Brendan and Greg had a more compositionally castle, more towers, it was a little wider, and it's more like the Disney castle, like a pyramid shape versus just a tall point.
Yeah.
But the challenge, if you're thinking more about the challenge, I can totally see where you're coming from.
Right.
So.
That's where it comes back from the beginning. I feel like that's where I didn't understand the full, or it didn't seem clear.
Convoluted.
The wrecking ball, the whole thing. What were
Yeah,
they really judging on? That's where I feel like it. Because I'm like, wait, no, I like theirs, and then I understand what they were saying about Brendan and Greg's, but I was like, but that wasn't. To me, it felt like that wasn't the challenge. That like the
Right.
tallest
Yeah.
and they did everything you asked them
so
to do.
it would be like the cliffhanger castle challenge. If one team had built one that hung out way far and had good aesthetics, a good story, versus one who built it wasn't sticking out very far but looked more like a castle, which one really embodies the challenge?
Yeah.
The challenge was about the cliffhanging element.
Right.
So I don't know. It's tricky.
If you're talking about the cliffhanger, it was the castle that was longer. It was Caleb and Jacob's castle that won. And theirs was aesthetically better than Zach and Wayne's, which was a little bit longer. But it's like they beat ours and Michelle and Natalie because they embodied the challenge a little bit better, a little bit further out. And so this is a little bit of a different result. They like to keep us on our toes by not doing exactly what they say.
Yes, right.
Amy always very clearly likes rewarding things like use of color and like what she's looking for personally. I think that maybe plays an element into it. So when she saw them having fun, like that's not part of the challenge, but she likes to reward that.
Yes.
Yeah. I can see
to
that.
encourage more of it, I suppose.
Yeah,
I
so
mean, I'm sure there's more quantitative ways they assess that
Yeah.
behind the scenes, but that's how it reads with the editing.
yeah. I think we can all agree that those are pretty much the top two, and then they kind of stack down from there. But talking about where they stack down, you want to talk about the bottom two?
Yeah, our bottom two, we had Austin and Justin and Nick and Stacy.
Yes.
And I could see why both of those were there.
Yeah. And I think that the right team went home. I didn't. There were some things about Nick and Stacy's build that were definitely lacking, but they did definitely go for height. And Austin and Justin had the shortest castle, right? According to the
I
judges,
think
believe.
so, yeah.
So it's like that. If you have the shortest castle when you're supposed to go for a tall castle, that could really weigh into why you're going home.
And that was with the hat, which was kind of a last minute addition. If they hadn't
Yeah.
had the hat,
It was
would have
like-
Been really
Yeah.
short, squat castle.
Yeah. My only thing is with Nick and Stacy is they've been in the bottom a lot, and they did the lava monster was very much reminiscent of the cats in the golf challenge, which they got called out on, and then they did the same exact thing, almost worse.
Yeah.
I said it looked
With
a little
this.
like little more like a burnt gingerbread.
That's,
man.
yeah.
It was just a flat. It's like flat Stanley.
It was like
Yeah, just
Yeah.
a burnt one. Yeah. Oh.
And I don't feel like Nick and Stacy's had anything special around it, like for the storyline or for the like. It was just white with blue lines. It didn't.
The one thing
have
I think
anything
they
else
focused on was it is tall,
Yes.
And it did have orange on the inside.
Yes,
which was
cool.
But that's two things, and then a lot of other things did fall short. So yeah, they're definitely in the bottom two, and if the fact that they're in the conversation for the bottom two often suggests that they really need to turn it around, or they're going home soon.
Right.
So,
And like they've said this week and last week, they know they can do better.
Yeah.
We've seen what they can do. They're just not
Time
quite
management.
affecting their time, managing their time as effectively as they need to be.
Yeah.
So that they can do that character and story building that they want to do. They're kind of saving it to the last minute, and they should be. That's their strength. They should be playing to their strengths from the get-go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Maybe they probably shouldn't have tried to go for tallest and should have focused on making cool characters.
Yes.
They
Because
can
when
do
they
that.
do it,
And
it's
that's
really
what
great.
they said in the judge check-in.
Yeah.
And obviously they put that in the edit because they knew that was going to be their issue later on.
Yeah.
But Amy said, "We know you can build good characters. You should probably focus on that." And they said, "Okay."
And then they kept building taller.
Second week in a row, they said that to them, though,
Yeah.
too. So that's why I was kind of surprised that I was a little shocked by the outcome because I really thought that they weren't listening to the judges. And usually, if the judge tells you something specifically and you don't do it, that usually gets you.
Yeah, they always edited it that way for sure.
Exactly.
But they really hammed up that they were putting those colored bricks inside. They talk about it all the time. But when you watched them being destroyed, there were at least 2 or 3 other teams that had also clearly filled their tower with different colored bricks.
Yeah,
I didn't write down which ones it were.
Emily and Liam, I think, had some stuff in
Yes.
theirs. I know that Steven
Yeah.
and Steven did have colored bricks inside theirs as well.
Because a lot of them you would see, like, the skinny part of the tower would get hit by the ball, and so it would sort of fling up, and all the bricks would come
out,
flying out from the center.
I think Dave and Emily were a little bit absent with the filler, but theirs was so tall that they had a different technique for that.
Right.
So
Yeah.
But yeah, interesting stuff. I know that when it comes to judging, when me and Steven were on the show, we're like, if Amy and Jamie say something, and even if it makes absolutely no sense,
Yeah.
you do it
You do
right
it.
away.
You do what they tell you. Yes.
absolutely
Because
have
what
to.
they're saying is right for the
Yes.
show. They are deciding, or them and whoever else helps them judge, producers, whatever,
Don't
Yeah.
do what
are
they
deciding who stays and goes. So it's like, just do what they say. If
When
they
they're
say,
telling you-
"Oh, it needs more background," then build a background as possible. Like in the hat challenge, they said, if you build a hat, it's like, "Oh, you need something on the top, like a plume or something." So we made giant flags instantly. Like you just, so you gotta pivot if they tell you. Like so,
And
Nick
it's
and Stacey
hard.
mistake.
I mean,
there.
you come up with an idea that you're confident about, and you have a picture of how it is in your head, and somebody walks up and tries to change that picture.
Yeah.
That can be hard to let
It
that
is.
go.
It's,
Especially if you're kind of in the zone and you're going at it. But
getting
if you
out of
don't
that
do what
focus.
they say, they will use it against you.
Yep.
Absolutely.
But good episode.
So good episode.
Enjoyed
Fun.
it.
Love the castles.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, throughout the entire thing, I was thinking of Miley Cyrus's "Wrecking Ball"
Yes.
song. But yeah, it's,
Oh,
I was waiting for Will to.
Yes.
I know, I was
and
waiting for
flying
him right
in
in.
on a ball.
I think we need Atlanta Brick Co. Wrecking Ball. That could be fun.
we were talking about it before we started filming. That it's like we either need to find a wrecking ball or make a wrecking ball, glue a bunch of gray bricks together,
Yes.
and have one somewhere and do something with it because it was just so
That
much
was
fun.
so fun to watch. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love the explosions.
So good. And this is one of those destruction challenges I'm more behind because it's not burning the Lego, it's not getting it nasty, it's just knocking it over.
Yeah.
And you can totally rebuild those castles.
Some
again.
parts probably get damaged in
Yeah.
the process irreparably, but
That's a lot less than blowing them up
Yeah.
with the explosives.
they don't have black powder all over them or
Yes,
slime
sparks.
and goo
Yeah.
and fireworks.
Oh, the slime. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, but next episode we got
Marvel.
And we'll be talking about it right after this because we're doing a two-parter because we didn't get to film our usual recap because Wednesday we had an episode drop late in the evening. We can't record it. Thursday was Thanksgiving. None of us were here working.
Right.
So now we're doing it now, and we'll be talking about that in just a minute. But thank you guys so much for joining for this episode and sharing your thoughts. We really appreciate it. We'll be back with a few more episodes still after this, so stay tuned. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. We'll be doing the next one now.
Yay.
Hello and welcome to, this is actually part 2 of a BTS Between the Studs episode.
BTS?
Exactly, yeah. And we just finished our talk about the Wrecking Ball episode from Wednesday. This is the Marvel episode from the Thursday right after.
Turkey Day.
Exactly, on Thanksgiving evening. We didn't get to cover it because we don't work in the store on Thanksgiving Day. So we're doing it this week and we're having a good time. We're going to have a great chat about it. And this week we have Mark, Chris, and Joe making his first appearance on the Lego Masters review. You've seen him a couple times in Between the Studs before, particularly his Lord of the Rings collection, which you can go watch after this episode. Yeah, very prestigious. So, but yeah, let's get started.
And Joe is here because he is a self-professed MCU
expert
fan.
Oh, okay. Man,
Well,
don't hurt me.
We're trying to talk you off here.
In relation to the store, he's
that's
our
true.
store expert.
Yeah. I do know a lot about Marvel.
Yeah.
You're one of the more knowledgeable Marvel fans here at the store. Yeah. Very good. And so, we got the right people to talk about this episode. What did you guys think about this Marvel-themed episode of Lego Masters? Does it remind you of the Star Wars episode from Season 1? Let's start with Joe.
I actually haven't seen the Star Wars episode from Season 1.
Okay.
Which is really sad because that's probably one of the coolest ones in it. And
it was good.
I missed that one somehow. So it was for me, it was the first time watching a themed one because y'all didn't have one in Season 2 that was...
Tragically not.
Themed,
We thought we would get Marvel, but Season 3 got it.
Season 3 got 2. They got Jurassic Park and Marvel.
You're right. They did. Oh, man.
You guys just got screwed over.
We did. We missed out big
I
time.
think they did just fine.
Yeah. No, I mean, you did win. So.
Steven and I can't complain.
You got
that much.
castle. You got to build castles. So.
Yeah, we're no longer the Castle Pros, but we got through.
Yeah. I thought it was awesome. I loved getting those scenes recreated. It just was cool. Not the scenes I would have picked. But
yeah, we'll get to that
good,
for sure. But what did you think, Chris?
It's been a while since I have seen that Star Wars episode.
Yeah.
However, if I recall correctly, they got to choose their theme, their sub-theme.
And how it looked.
And their build.
Yeah.
So with this one, it is very different.
It's the photo.
Because they have to recreate a photo. Mm-hmm. They don't have a choice.
Yeah.
And I mean, so how does that work? When they all went to choose their theme...
Did they just grab it?
I mean, what if there's a fight? What if two people grab it at the same time?
Yeah.
They all seem to just grab the one in front of them, kind of.
Now, there are challenges where you run forward and that's what you get. Because,
like
for example, in the dog one, I believe that was the case. In the in the house reno, the flip my block challenge from our season, whatever house you ran up and grabbed was the color you got to work with, and you had to use all those pieces. In this challenge, the way that they all seem to kind of gravitate to different things and get that decided pretty quickly makes me think that this was predetermined. You pick out a number and you get a picture. So that's what I think it was, and then they just act like they want to grab it.
Yeah.
Because they're going to act like they grab it every time, even though more often than not it's randomly assorted. So, because they have fairness things they have to watch out for.
Because, I mean, you're talking $100,000 on the line.
Yeah, and
Crash
is going to crash, so...
I'd be running to the one I want.
You're going to get some aggressive dudes in there.
Yeah, Steven
knocked over
yeah, he actually kind of ran over this one, too, because he's just so excited all the time. It's great. But, yeah, so I think that this is probably a random one, but could have been actually picked out. We'll see.
I think they got picked beforehand, randomly picked, but not in the moment.
I could message a few of my newfound friends on Season 3 and see if they have any insight there later. But overall though, Marvel's fun. Pictures, making a picture. I don't think we've really seen that specific type of challenge before, so exciting to see that. And overall enjoyed it a lot. I think that, like you said, some of the images were way harder than others. So let's talk about that now. Which build do we want to discuss first? We want to talk about the elephant in the room or talk about the ones we liked? So,
well, how about Brandon and Greg?
Yeah.
Because that was different. That stood apart from all the others because it wasn't really judged the way it should have been because they were forced to play the golden brick.
Yes.
So
we could talk about that for a second, actually, too.
Yeah.
Because they very thankfully they have less teams. They have a little more time to show judging, building, and all sorts of things. Mm-hmm. So they specifically stated, per the rules of the golden brick, you have to turn in the golden brick now. There's not even a choice.
Yeah, you turn it in or you just keep it for no reason.
No, I don't think they could even keep it. I don't know. Anyway, they obviously turn it in so they're safe. And that's great. And that gives you a nice boost when you're building. It's like, there's no way we're going home, so that's good. But in our season, they specifically did not clarify that. Mm-hmm. They said, "Oh, Mark, Steven, you're gonna turn in the golden brick? Oh, wow!" Yeah, and it's like that was absolutely our last chance to do that. We asked them like 10 times, like, "Are you sure we have to turn it in?" They're like, "Yes." We're like, "Are you sure we have to turn it in?" They're like, "Yeah." So, because we didn't trust them. Anyways, so they turned it in, and their build turned out really good. I was super impressed.
I think that was the best one in the whole room. It was awesome.
It's probably worth mentioning they also had one of the best pictures to build from, because that is an epic... I mean, I think that shot was designed to be epic.
It is
as
an
a standalone picture.
It is what I would have chosen.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I would have loved that build.
I couldn't have done anything like that, though. Theirs was
insane.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm. The rainbow bridge, the background, and which they got...
I thought was amazing. Which was weird, because it made it look so much cooler with that background. Mm-hmm. That just added to the effect, and it looked awesome.
Yeah.
I think they just had to find something wrong with it. If they want to make it a dramatic show and action-packed, it's like, oh, they played the golden brick, so they're lucky they didn't get kicked off.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
It's what they wanted to do, and it just, no.
It doesn't work out that way.
It didn't. It was very like, dun, dun, dun.
Yeah.
It's like the golden brick just didn't really come into play.
Yeah.
They
And
didn't need to play it.
They've won 3 times already, which is by far the most on their
Yeah.
season. I think Emily and Liam have also won twice.
I think so.
But they're starting to look pretty good as the season progresses.
Oh,
So
yeah.
they're trying to tamp them down, I think, a little bit, and that's why they weren't in the top 2 at the very least. But there were some other good builds that we'll talk about, but
Yeah.
I think that they were intentionally a little bit,
And you mentioned
Be quiet,
that they had a
stay
lot
down.
more parts on their build.
Yeah, so we were talking a little bit about this earlier. We usually discuss a little bit before we start filming.
Get warmed up.
But one thing that I observed is that, they're using 1x1 plates to create a large mosaic of their background. And there are tens of thousands of 1x1 plates on there. And that means that they're using more parts than all the other backgrounds combined. And they are putting down more parts than all the other backgrounds combined, which means they are building faster and they're managing their time better than all the other teams combined.
Which is very
So it's like, they're really focused and it's paying off. And it's unfortunate that to make this show more interesting, I think they're really like, they're ignoring,
squashed.
they're glossing over the fact that their build is really good. So I think that they got a little bit, not shafted, but they're getting glossed over.
Yeah.
So intentionally, and I think that people are probably going to be like, I think Brendan Griggs build's pretty good too. Anyway, as a Lego professional, I think they should have been rated a little higher. But yeah. So anyway, moving on. What was another build that we really liked? I think that Dave and Emily with their
I'd say that's
Obelisk.
I'd say that's my second favorite.
That would have been,
Obelisk.
if I was ranking the top 2, which I don't.
Yes.
They would have been in the top 2 for
absolutely,
me.
same.
Because that was some great sculpting with those bajillion
It did
teeth.
look amazing. Yeah, the teeth really gave it an amazing effect.
Oh, yeah.
Very accurate to that scene.
And it was a fun scene too.
Yeah.
That was that was a part of the movie that was just awesome.
It's another
Yeah.
slow-mo shot that you stop and you're like, wow.
Yeah,
So
those
great.
2 jaw-dropping shots, and they made them look very, very accurate.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nailed it. And I was thinking there'd be more catastrophic failures with trying to recreate a challenging scene like these, but they nailed it.
Yeah,
and
they
it was
did great.
So. And Dave and Emily, they can't get a
They
win to
like
save
second
their
place.
life. Yeah, they're at the Zach and Wayne of this season because Zach and Wayne were always getting second after the first challenge, but they haven't even won once yet.
Yeah,
So.
I definitely thought theirs was good enough to win, though.
Yeah, if Brendan and Greg were being kind of held out of the top 2,
Then it should have been Dave and Emily.
I feel like I would have given it to Dave and Emily, but while we're talking about the team that did win, we'll talk about the judging more in detail later, but Steven and Steven, I love Steven and Steven, and I think they're great builders. They're very smart builders, tactical. Like with the Wrecking Ball Challenge, they stopped that Wrecking Ball.
That was very impressive.
Cool. That was cool.
They've done some amazing stuff before, and this was really a good scene. They had a forced perspective background. They had the saw blade coming out of the bus perfectly to scale. Every detail, every car, every building was the right color. The problem is, it was all kind of city building. It wasn't like... It was good, but when I think of Lego Masters, I think of something that you could not do at home.
Yeah.
The Obelisk, you could not do at home. The Thor scene, you could not do at home. Really, realistically.
Yeah, you're right.
And so the city scene, most people could do that.
It looked like a display you'd see at the Lego store,
Yeah.
or in one of those cases at Walmart.
Yeah.
One of those glued together displays. They just looked like Lego sets put together.
It was a very well done city scene, but it wasn't that far off from what you see in sets. And that's what's the problem.
And it may have been a result of the picture they had to work with.
Yeah.
They didn't have any giant creatures. They didn't have any giant landscape.
Yeah.
They
had a close-up shot of a saw blade on a bus, and that's what they had to build. And they actually did a lot more than that.
They did.
But
And that's what I was going to say, is one thing they added to it was the monster, Gargantuous, I think is his name. And that's what I expected to be like their wow factor, and it was just brown and ugly.
they're not the best creature builders.
And it kind of just looked like it was just plopped there.
Yeah.
So it really just, that was what I thought could have made it like, oh yeah, this is so cool. But
Yeah.
I thought they did have the funniest line of the night, where the one Steven, the smaller Steven, the one on the left, he's always on the
the
left.
Chief Steven.
Oh, he's the chief. Okay.
He's the fire chief.
So he mentioned the Mystic Portal,
Yes.
And the other Steven said, it's a power saw.
Whatever he said.
Corrected him. Circular saw.
Yeah.
You know?
It's a magical circular saw. It's not a mystic portal.
Yeah. No, get it right,
He corrected himself fast. Yeah, it was great.
It was so funny. I mean, he didn't wait. He just knew exactly what it was.
Yeah. He said he was a Marvel fan. So.
Yeah, so yeah, I believe him.
Steven, go ahead.
And they looked awesome at that Comic-Con when they showed Chief Steven, I think, was dressed up as Thanos.
Well, that was actually Crash Steven, I believe.
Okay.
But yeah.
But that was cool.
It was awesome. He looked good.
That's actually just the tip of the iceberg. He's done like a dozen different Marvel characters throughout the years, and he goes all out.
Yeah, no, it looked amazing.
Yeah.
So he's got us as far as Marvel.
Oh yeah, he definitely is a bigger fan.
So Steven, Fire Chief Steven, is classic Lego fan all the way. Steven, Crash Steven, is Marvel fan all the way, and he's into Lego too, but he's more into Marvel than Lego, and so this was his challenge.
Yeah. Which has probably helped them win. Yeah, in my opinion.
I feel like that's why the judges gave it to him.
Because they were such big Marvel fans.
Because they're a big Marvel fan. It just kind of goes with the theme and the positive vibe of the show.
Yeah, I agree with that.
If you're talking about how exactly it matches the picture, they're right up there with the other as well. Yeah. So it's like, the less epic picture, still nailed it. So, I mean, whatever criteria they're using, they're not quite explaining thoroughly enough for us.
Yeah, exactly.
Was there a prize?
There wasn't a prize for this one.
It was just
the golden
rights.
brick was used, and it was just bragging rights for Marvel.
Okay.
I don't think there was any particular prize. There should have been.
Doesn't matter too much.
Free tickets to a movie? Yeah. Something? You know, come on.
Something on display at Marvel's headquarters.
Yeah.
That would have been something.
Good. Come on. Anyway, so next time maybe they'll incorporate a small prize for that. Anyway, so moving right along, we had Nick and Stacy was one of the other teams in the thing, and they had a Shang-Chi ocean dragon battle scene, which was one of the harder builds.
Yeah, it really was a very difficult build.
Because the obelisk is hard, Thor's bridge is not easy, but that is hard.
That is definitely
hard. The waves?
You've got waves, you've got this creature flailing with a bunch of limbs, and then you've got a Shang-Chi posed up high, coming
in the
down
air.
on
He's
it.
not attached to anything.
Yeah, so that they did really well in that. I really liked their build.
It was also hard because it was all the same color.
Yeah, and it's gray basically.
How do you add color to a color that's not there?
Yeah.
You know.
I think Nick and Stacy, you can dunk on them a little bit if you want to for some of the builds and being in the bottom two, but they're a pretty good team in that they'll talk it out, they'll work it out. They're not fighting with each other. Stacy was right in saying that you need to add more texture, you need to add more color, white, transparent pieces, something to break up that dark blue. Otherwise, you're wasting time putting down a lot of bricks.
And Nick seemed to take her being right very well.
At first, he was a little hesitant to change his idea.
She is right.
But then they ended up pivoting, and I think that's really what saved them.
It looked a lot
and
better,
they were fine.
Yeah.
They're a good team.
Yeah.
They're very cohesive.
Exactly. I know that Stacy doesn't have quite as much build experience as Nick, but Nick, I mean, the dragon head was good. The idea with the string was good. They ended up getting knocked on the lack of background, which I actually don't agree with.
I completely don't agree with that.
Yeah.
That's a scene that doesn't need background because it's more of a shot that the waves are there and everything.
That's
so
much
if you
more
add
important.
like a background, you're taking away from the overall effect of these waves crashing over.
Yeah.
It was very artistic.
Yeah.
And I feel like they took a risk by doing something different.
Yeah.
And not having that background. And that background is 2D.
Yeah.
And they didn't want 2D
They could have had a gray wall behind it and made it more accurate.
The judges said to somebody else, your challenge is to make this not look 2D.
Yeah.
You got to make it look 3D. And they did. And it looked awesome.
It did.
And I liked that they didn't do a background.
No, I totally agree with that. I think all of us are on the same page with that one.
But I can see why they ended up in the bottom two because the other teams higher up were just nailing it.
Yeah.
So it's like I can see why they ended up there, but I think that they were actually safe compared to the next team, Emily and Liam, who really struggled with this challenge overall. I think everything was working against them. They had a really tough picture because Captain Marvel, there's some amazing visuals. Yeah. And they got the most boring frame from that movie they could have.
They really did.
She's like fighting on the train.
Just anything
Why didn't they include that?
Anything
fighting in the rooms inside the ships or on those planets. There's so many other cooler scenes. And they got the blue background holding a missile. That's all you have, a gray missile.
No clouds.
How do you suspend that in the air properly?
Yeah.
Right? It's such a big, huge item. That's your centerpiece,
Yeah.
and it's suspended. The other centerpieces were usually the dragons, the obelisk,
A minifigure animal.
Those are all
down here.
grounded items, whereas their big centerpiece was in the middle of the air.
And to make an accurate background, you would just have a wall of 2x4 blue bricks. And that is the most boring thing you could do on Lego
Because
Masters.
it was a sky.
But that's all it is.
But they did a good job in making the trails. You know,
they did,
the halo around Captain
They
Marvel.
did what they could, but that was still a super challenging start. And then they made that missile really detailed, which they should, but it was very fragile. And it took them they had
Too long,
12 hours in this challenge. So it took them 8 to 10 hours to finish them. I forget the exact time, but it was most of the time was in the missile. They had no time for the
And
background.
it's just a missile. It's kind of boring.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's
You
not a
can't do
big
too
monster
much.
with these big teeth and these big arms. So
There's no character there. Yeah.
They got what's a polite word? They got shafted.
Emily said they got screwed. It's like, we are screwed. We have the worst picture. At the very beginning, they knew that they were going to struggle.
Yeah.
And you could tell that Emily and Liam, all the teams are tired at this point, but you could tell they were tired. And they were emotionally on edge.
They were, and that just pushed them over.
Yeah, they could not handle the pressure at this point. With those difficult things coming into play, it's just...
Yeah, I'd say that was the hardest build to do
Yeah.
and the most boring looking one.
Yeah, and it's like, I can't understand why they picked that picture. Because if you have Captain Marvel in that one movie, there's still so many other... I mean, hey...
Well, so for that,
It's bad enough it was Captain Marvel.
yeah, no, he's right.
Well, as far as visually is concerned, I mean,
visually,
Captain Marvel isn't my favorite Marvel
Storyline
movie.
we don't care about.
But I mean, there's so many other better scenes, and it
They
just
really
is
are.
baffling why they would make. Maybe they wanted to make it hard for
I
somebody.
don't know, but they had 5 scenes. I thought the Thor one was amazing, Obelisk amazing, Shang-Chi amazing, but this Doctor Strange and Captain Marvel, they could have picked 2 really other different scenes that were so much cooler. Like Doctor Strange has some really cool visually scenes.
Better scenes than that.
So much better. They could have done something
So
really cool.
it does make you think that maybe a non-Lego person could have chosen that Captain Marvel scene because as soon as I saw that scene, I was
I
like,
knew it was over.
how
That's
are you
just
going
awful.
to do that?
Yeah, it's the worst possible picture from that movie. So.
It's not like, oh my goodness, that's so cool.
Yeah.
And then it's like, they did a great job of suspending it.
Yeah.
They did. But it just, that's difficult to do and have a background.
Yeah.
So I feel bad for Emily and Liam there. But let's talk about we already are talking about it a bit. But so the top 2 was Steven and Steven 1, and then Dave and Emily were second, and then Greg and Brennan were in the middle, literally. And then you had Nick and Stacy and Emily and Liam at the very bottom. So did you? I'm guessing we all disagree with some
I
of the
very
top
much
results.
disagree with that.
Yeah.
I would have put Brandon and Greg
Yep.
at the top, which I don't think they did because
Reasons.
we talked
I think that's
about
why they
the
were
Golden
in
Brick.
the middle.
Mhm.
Because
Yeah.
they didn't want to put them on either spot. They just wanted them to kind of be ignored. So
Yeah.
they just threw them in the middle.
They wanted. They didn't want to have him win too many times to make it seem way out of proportion.
But
right?
if they put them in the bottom, people would have been like,
that
"That's
makes no
stupid."
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And then David and Emily.
I agree with that.
But Nick and Stacy
It's
could have
really-
been in
it's
that
tight.
top 2. They
Yeah.
could have.
It's very
it was
tight.
so good.
They did good.
I didn't like that string.
You didn't like
I-
the string holding the
It
figure?
was different and unique.
It was.
I just didn't like it very much.
I would have done something with clear bars and worked
Yeah.
something out there instead. I just think that
David
would
and
have
Emily
better.
used the clear bricks
Yeah.
to hold Drax up.
Yep.
Which works.
And nobody had any critiques
No
for
one
that.
said
So it's like he
anything.
probably could have done the same thing with Shang-Chi.
Yeah.
What did Brandon and Greg use to hold Thor up?
He was on a big
Theirs-
lightning strike.
Oh my gosh, theirs was so well done.
Yeah.
That was
He's
insane.
on a huge piece of illuminated lightning. Yeah.
And
So.
they didn't talk about it.
They didn't.
talk
no,
about
it was so cool. It was like going all the way
Yeah.
to the edge.
Mhm.
And it just, I looked at it and I was like, what is that even attached to?
And this is why I do like the Lego Masters Australia one so much, is because they have more time as a show, because it's like they're like hour and a half episodes.
Yeah.
To actually talk about some of these
Yeah.
really interesting and cool things.
Or why it didn't fit the challenge the way the judges wanted to, and that's why it's there.
Yeah.
You know. So and so we were left in the dark or disagreeing
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah.
But that being said, the results happened. I think that the right team did go home, and I feel
I agree
bad
with that, yes.
for Emily and Liam. But I think that they just got the worst build opportunity there,
I mean,
and they couldn't
yeah.
hack it. So,
Like she
yeah.
said, she was like, there, where's
Yeah,
she knew.
That's what she said.
Yep.
That is what she
That is
said.
well.
That is actually what she said.
did
Yeah.
say that.
So.
That's what she said. Yeah.
But overall, I really enjoyed this episode. I really enjoyed the builds. I was very
Yeah.
impressed But I love the builds. These are starting to look a lot more like Lego Masters builds.
Exactly. It's getting tight.
Because like early in the season, like episode 2 with the dinosaurs, I'm like,
yeah,
are these really Lego Masters builds? They look at a little
a kid could have done
play scene-ish, but then now that it's boiled down and they're getting some real competition, some teams are really starting to get a good opportunity to build something they're really proud of.
Yeah, I think, what's the judge's name?
Amy
said, like, at this point, it's not picking the worst 2, but it's like
nitpicking.
Who didn't do super well.
Yeah.
Because there's just so many good builders left at this point. You can't go, well, you guys just did terrible. It's like, no, it's just you just didn't do good enough.
Top 5 teams out of 12, they're going to be some skilled builders in there, so that's good.
Oh, yeah.
But very impressive. And then that's about it we've got for today because the golden brick was used. Builds were good. We're getting less to talk about, which is fine because our episodes will be a little easier to watch now.
They just ordered the how it should have been, like who was judged fairly.
Yeah.
It should have been Brandon and Greg, Dave and Emily. And then I think Stacy and Nick.
Yeah, or maybe Steven and
Then
Steven.
Steven and Steven. But those tight. And then I do think Emily and Leon.
Yeah.
It did seem like there were less Will Arnett puns in this one.
Disappointing.
Yeah, there wasn't that many. There was a lot of hero posing.
What was funny?
That was funny.
Yeah.
What was funny is he did talk about not being in the MCU.
Yep.
Which was funny, but he's in the DC.
He's Lego Batman. I mean, that's pretty iconic.
He is Lego Batman.
He's in his own movie. I mean,
That's
he
fair,
can complain all he wants, but I mean,
He's got his superhero.
And then he was in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles too.
Exactly.
So
I actually
made a
had that as a
minifigure.
back
he
pocket
does have a
retort.
minifigure for that.
Really?
So I actually memorized the name of his character and everything. And I was going to be like, if he ever started bugging us too much, I'd be like, hey, so when you were this character in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, did you think that was really playing to your acting talent?
Vern, right?
Yeah, Vern, yeah.
She could have just called him, okay, Vern.
Yeah, exactly. And so I was gonna pull that out, like, so.
That's
yeah.
funny. That's good.
Yeah, but no. Anyway, so good episode, and looking forward to Daytona racing, or not Daytona, NASCAR racing.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
that looks
exciting.
that looks crazy, and it looks like you got to be a decent little driver.
Yep.
I don't know why they made
Could you imagine
Emily drive.
getting?
Well, because she'll fit.
She was like,
She'll
that's true.
fit,
Dave
though.
would have just crushed it.
Yeah.
Could
Well,
you imagine getting kicked off Lego Masters because
you can't drive.
couldn't drive a car?
you couldn't drive the go-kart.
That's true. That'd be pretty sad.
But this is exciting because we've seen some things on Lego Masters, not the United States version, well, a little bit, but they'll build life-size cars or parts of them.
Yeah.
And they'll usually go home for it. But this is one where they actually are building a life-size car on a chassis, which is really crazy. I hope they gave them enough time. So
Yeah.
this could be fun.
Hey, something we forgot to talk about is the minifigures
Oh,
they
yeah.
used on
Yes,
the show.
we almost
Yeah, I
didn't
forgot
talk
about
about
Came
that.
from Joe.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
sold those to Lego Masters. So
One
I
of the
knew,
producers.
I knew that this was coming for about 6 months. I was just waiting for it this whole season. Going,
Yep.
I
Come
must
on,
not have
what's
been
tomorrow?
here. Usually I
You
handle
weren't.
them
No,
when they
it was
come
like
in, and
there's only like 3 of us here that day, and they came in. I was like, all right,
I had no idea this was coming.
Yeah, I totally forgot to tell Chris.
On that note, I think we actually forgot to mention that we did sell them the castle figures from the previous
Yeah,
Wrecking
that
Ball
too,
episode
yeah.
as well. So those
Yeah.
particular characters, they just needed some weird Lego characters.
Yeah.
They didn't want to have to buy sets, so guess where they went for minifigures?
Yeah, like
Let a brick go.
with the Marvel
Where,
one. I mean,
where else are you gonna go?
I know, exactly.
The
So-
Drax is retired. That
Mhm.
Thor's retired. So it's like they couldn't get these figures from Lego because they don't have them anymore.
Yeah.
So they had to come to us.
Amazing.
Because we're just cool like that.
Yep. So if you need your Marvel figure collection to be boosted,
ATLbrick.com.
you know where to go, guys.
ATLbrick.com, or if you're on the World Wide Web, you go to the www.atlbrick.com.
That's true.
You
Don't
go to
forget
that one.
triple W.
All those links are in the description. And thank you guys for watching this at least 2-parter episode of Lego Masters Review. We might do a third one. If that's
Wow.
going to be, it's going to be after this one. But we'll see. I think that might be for
Crazy.
next week. We'll see. Because that's going to be coming out. We're filming this the day of. It's going to be coming out tonight.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, but yeah. We will see you guys then with the next final few episodes of Lego Masters Season 3.
Down to the wire, baby.
Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.
Need for speed.